Hello and welcome to episode 40 of Teppou Republic. In the last episode we saw an Okayama attack on Setsu. They came at us with loads of samurai, but we used our powerful castle and large number of mortars to destroy many of their forces before they could properly attack, and in the end they were defeated. Over in the east, Takayuki pressed against the last Oroara main force, mainly Shogutai, a very traditional force that rushed against our line, doing some damage but ultimately was defeated by the intense volley fire provided by Takayuki's main line, so the Oroara are now in trouble. This marked the beginning of a general campaign to start pushing into shogunate territory and moving all of the armies formerly being used to garrison territories up to the border, and we're going to push north to eradicate the last of the shogunals, including the Oroara stronghold at Fukushima. In the west, the Satsuma are conducting multiple invasions on our territory, including a naval invasion of Ki, a very dangerous situation which we don't have the resources to deal with, so we'll have to just do what we can about that. I also constructed a fleet to go and attempt to save Compton, although it doesn't have the ability to do so yet, but before I could build it up anymore, it was attacked by a Swano fleet, so now we have to fight to keep it alive. You still meet people every day who come down and gawk at you, no idea what you're doing. Some of them even get mad and try to stop you, but eventually we got guards, so nowadays it don't happen so much. It ain't until the bravest of them come back from riding on it that they start to have the faintest about what we're up to. Kids get it, they love it. Everyone else wants to know why their fields are government property now. Bosses tell us not to answer anything like that, probably because they don't have an answer to give us. Once you get away from the towns though, it's more peaceful. Usually we spend all day clearing the way for the line, then engineers raise and flatten out the way. We've moved on a mile down the route before the rails go down. The layers don't get the engineers to help them, but they got this little huddle of foreigners from the British Empire who tell them everything and then watch from the shade while they get on with it. They're probably making 10 times the money doing it as well. Boss says they're meant to be getting some honest Japanese guys in to replace them, but they never actually show up. I reckon the Brits are twisting the arms of the paper pushers in Omi to keep their cushy jobs. Most of the guys hate them for it. I guess it don't set well with me neither, but then again, can't help but think that if the tables were turned, I wouldn't be trying to do the exact same thing. Welcome back. My fleet is just getting ready to face an enemy fleet which has come to attack me to prevent me from raiding trade, but actually I was only raiding that trade in order to draw their attentions. In some ways I wanted this battle, but according to the balance bar I am in trouble. The enemy has one ship coming in as reinforcements, which is coming in at an odd angle, the rest of them coming in a line. I was initially attempting the cross the T tactic, where I just deploy in a line and then let the enemy come into my firing arc so I can blast them with all my guns at once. This guy on the side slightly altering the plan means I have to form a little echelon, but actually the plan was ruined in the same way it's been ruined before, when the enemy's main fleet turns off to form its own line that just moves parallel to mine and fires upon it. So we're just exchanging blows very fairly, which means I can't get any sort of real advantage here because the enemy's ships are pretty much the same as mine. So this means I can't use my crossing the T tactic. I'm going to have to actually do some naval maneuvers. Meanwhile, the ship on the end that I turned off to engage with the enemy's reinforcements is in a bit of a predicament because the enemy's line happens to be coming towards it. So all of the enemy's main fleet is now going to be able to fire into the back of this ship, which is already engaging the enemy's ship just down the red line of death there. And because it is stuck on the red line of death, it can't really maneuver from where it is. So they're not going to be very happy. Meanwhile, the main line is going to begin maneuvers. As I said, I'm pushing them forwards. I'm going to try and force some sort of cross the T by moving them across the front of these group of 3 ships that have broken off from the rest of the enemy's fleet, whilst this guy is going to sit here as bait. Unfortunately, he routed very quickly. So now we're going to have to engage the whole enemy fleet at once. The enemy is kind of forming 2 groups, as you can see in the minimap, and I formed one single line. The good thing about my formation now is that most of my ships can fire on the enemies, but not all of them can fire on me because they've got a slightly disorderly formation. They did also have one guy who decided to do a suicide charge, which is perfect for me. I can micromanage my ships and switch some of them to explosives to engage this guy at close range. You can see I've already started to fire on this ship, and now more close range explosive fire will be able to kill some of the crew from this not particularly powerful vessel. So they're not going to be happy with the situation and they'll quickly surrender under this sustained fire. So as I said, I'm micromanaging these ships to make sure that some of them still have solid shot, because we are engaging the enemy at maximum range most of the time. 2 of their ships here have gotten out of the way, so I can't do my crossing the T tactic as I initially planned, but things are still going okay since most of my line has line of sight on the enemy. We're firing at them, they're firing back at us, we don't have a disadvantage. The only problem for me is the ship right at the back, which is facing the enemy's heaviest ships, the frigates. It's outgunned by them and outranged in fact, so it's going to take some really heavy punishment. Now a tiny bit later, I curved my line around. You can see what's happening. The enemy's detached group has got on one side of my line, and those frigates are now in the middle. So we're essentially dancing around the frigates whilst the outside of the line hits the enemy's isolated single ships. So we're making good effective use of both sides of our ships in order to maximise the amount of firepower we're using on the enemy. My ship at the back of the line there has decided to detach from the battle and begin repairs. The focus of the enemy's attack is now on the ship at the front, which must now face both of the enemy's frigates there in the background and an enemy corvette on the other side. Being bombarded from both sides is very dangerous for it. However, the enemy ships are also being bombarded by the rest of my line, meaning they're going to take a lot more fire than I am. We're also now close enough to them that I can switch to explosives, which the enemy apparently cannot do. The explosives quickly rout one of the enemy frigates. This one surrenders after taking sustained fire from my little convoy of ships. Their crew abandons the ship. The balance bar shifts to be about even to both sides. That frigate was making a big difference, and they've got another frigate which is on the verge of going. You can see the ship's heavily damaged, it's on fire, it's taking sustained explosive shot, and they're not actually firing back because they're attempting to repair their ship at the moment. They're a sitting duck. More explosive fire tempts them to surrender. Their crew abandons the ship, and now you can see the balance bar instantly shifts in our favour. Those 2 frigates were really holding the enemy's fleet together, so by outmaneuvering them and destroying them, we've gained a massive advantage. Now it's just a few isolated corvettes to hunt down, and that ship that was under repair at the back of the line has now come back in to do some very useful manoeuvres against these ships, holding them in place whilst the rest of my line comes back to surround and destroy them. So that happened quite promptly, but then one of my ships, which had taken damage, the second one in the line, was gradually sinking. It's been sinking for a while now actually, but I was finding I couldn't force them to repair the ship. The button just wasn't working. You can actually hear them receiving the orders, but they're not repairing it. But I was willing to let that go because I thought I'd win the battle before it sinks, and now you can see from the minimap it looks like I have won, and I was confused as to why the battle didn't end. Turns out the enemy actually have one ship hidden in the corner of the map, completely stuck here as you can see, and it actually doesn't appear on the minimap because it's underneath this little icon. It's weird because I actually considered looking in the 2 corners, but then thought the AI would never send a ship to go and sit in the corners whilst they were attacking me. Apparently I was wrong, and as a result of not looking there, my ship sinks after a long struggle, although I guess it is their own fault for refusing to repair the ship, or at least whoever's giving the orders to them refusing to give them the message that they should be repairing the ship and not sinking. Just after the ship sank, that was when I discovered the ship in the corner and redirected my remaining ships to start moving towards it. Pretty inconvenient. I guess it was a combination of a glitch, me not being aware of the battlefield, and the user interface making things a little bit difficult. So a shame to have lost that ship since the rest of our ships have survived, but now the enemy's boat is in trouble. You can see it did actually manage to get itself out of its little predicament in the corner and is sailing towards us. So my ships came along, we surrounded it and forming a quick line to just come around the back of this enemy ship and bombarding them. They tried to repair themselves as they took heavy fire, but quickly surrendered when they realised that was not going to help. The battle ends as a heroic victory for the Sioux fleet. The enemy's fleet was more powerful than ours, had better ships. We have completely destroyed it, losing only one of our own ships, and even then that loss we took was a little bit of a cheap shot. So overall, a very good battle. We're now one fleet closer to saving Compton. Fortunately, most of the hands aboard were rescued, although not all. They will be sent back to the dry docks. The Admiralty has already begun construction of new ships, and they have want of men with seafaring experience, albeit limited. As for us, we know that today we face only a portion of the strength the enemy has in waiting for us at Kawachi, yet the damage we have taken will take some weeks to repair. I will propose that we return to the docks to refit, join the new ships into our group, and then sail for our American hero with all haste. If he lasts another month, we might just succeed. So from the results you can see indeed we lost one ship, a lot of the other ships also taking damage to their hulls, which is unfortunate. Some of them are low enough that a few more hits might actually sink them. The enemy of course did have more guns than us, so it makes sense they would have dealt us some punishment during that battle. Now immediately afterwards, the Matsue attack General Kunimitsu on the border between Hoki and Inaba. You might remember Kunimitsu is stuck here because he's stuck inside enemy zones of control and isn't able to move, so the enemy can exploit this by attacking him as they wish. They've come at us this time with an army that has lots of high-level traditional units. A curious force that's going to have to close the distance between itself and Kunimitsu's defensive position if it wants to do any damage. So let's see how it does. My initial formation put some of my melee units in front of the main line because I was fearing a big melee charge might actually be able to reach my line, so I thought I'd have my guys in front, especially if the enemy's cavalry get involved, which the enemy has quite a large number of. But to begin with, we're going to be fighting with artillery. We have a variety of artillery. Only one squad of parrot guns though. The other artillery are howitzers and Napoleonic howitzers, inferior artillery in general, who won't be able to do as much damage as we usually see. Here are the enemy's back Matsue Lancers, the most powerful unit in their army and the most powerful cavalry unit in the game. If they get a charge on one of my units, they are gone. The rest of the force is a mix of traditional and modern units, as I said, including these Buddhist Zealots, a very dangerous unit, very high morale and extremely deadly in close combat, the sort of unit that actually can just charge a line of guns and make it through. But before all that, they're going to be taking a lot of fire from the artillery, the shrapnel in particular that the howitzers and the parrot guns can fire will take out large amounts of their forces because they're arranged in multiple lines. Curiously, the enemy had a detachment of scouts and line infantry moving through the woods behind their army, but it looked like they were moving to come and join their main force, but the main force wasn't waiting for them. So effectively, they've deployed some units in such a way that they probably won't take part in the actual battle. So the enemy continued their charge, taking artillery fire all the way. I saw their cavalry started moving through to the front of their army. I thought they might be going to attempt a charge before their main force arrived, which would be perfect for me. Unfortunately for these cavalry, they are caught in a burst of shrapnel and lose a lot of their horsemen. And it appears they weren't actually intending to charge us anyway, so they're just going to go and change their formation as they come in. It seems they're indecisive. The rest of their men are sprinting through that artillery fire like bosses. Their leading unit of archers has just come into range of the sharpshooters, who will begin to cut them down. Those archers will not reach the fight with their morale intact. They've already lost so much. The rest of the forces behind them being pounded by the explosive shot of those howitzers. And now their back Matsue Lancers, their best unit, suddenly charges out in front of the line. This is absolutely perfect for me because I can just rush forward my rifle infantry to fire at them. That's exactly what I do. The back Matsue Lancers lose loads of their men, still really far from the line. They slow their charge. I don't know what they were thinking, but I was thinking I'm going to stop them. I rush out some Yarikachi with the intention of stopping them getting anywhere near the line. And as the Yarikachi approach the enemy's cav, they turn and rout. So we've defeated their best unit already. My guys rush back to the line, taking friendly fire on the way. My rifle infantry are now right out in front of the line with the melee behind, because I think I can gun down these enemies before they arrive. Their leading unit already taken extreme damage. These guys following behind the Naginata Levy are in good health, but their morale is low, so I don't have to kill very many of them once they arrive. A dangerous move from the enemy is they're pulling a cavalry attack on my left flank. I've prepared spears to receive them. Among those cavalry are samurai heroes, an elite horse archer unit with extreme range. The main line is now firing towards the enemy's general formation, which is still attempting to charge me. They've actually charged in with these close-range blunderbuss militants. They're something like the shock troopers that you've seen me use. They have shotguns that can kill many enemies with each shot, but they fall back before they can get a proper volley. The Naginata Levy, charging towards my line, take extreme gunfire, artillery fire, and then a charge from my own spearmen who rush out to meet them. So now I've got all the enemies locked in melee. The enemy's melee troops are superior to mine, so my guys are going to take real punishment there, but at least we're holding them away from the softer units. Meanwhile, on the flank, the enemy's cavalry have been caught by a spear charge there, so they're now effectively knocked out. Their samurai hero was bombarding one of my units of line infantry with arrows, but I've now repurposed the Yarikachi to go and deal with them. The line infantry didn't actually get a shot off from them in the end, although I had intended to try and beat them in a gun battle, which is the logical thing to do against horse archers. We're just going to drive them away with this spear charge. The enemy takes the spear charge, they don't even attempt to skirmish, and now they'll fight in melee, actually killing a massive number of my samurai because they're so good in melee, but eventually being defeated. In the centre, we've defeated all of the enemy's assaulting units. My guys taking extreme casualties as predicted, but at least we've gotten rid of them. The enemy's line infantry decide to run away without fighting much more. We already have a massive ranged advantage, so there's no point in them even attempting to fight, although that message is apparently lost on a squad of scouts, now sitting in these trees, attempting to fire from hidden positions on my line, and actually inflicting some kills because I wasn't really paying attention to them. But now that they're all that's left, they're in a little bit of trouble. I directed some sharpshooters who outranged the scouts to fire at them. They took a couple of losses, realised what's happening, and get out of there. So all of the enemy's army is now in full retreat. I rushed cavalry forward to drive them off the field. The artillery too will do a good job of killing some of the enemy before they can escape. It's a decisive victory for Kunimitsu's forces. All he needs now is to get out of his little problem being stuck in the enemy's zone of control so that he can move his army and then try and exploit this victory he's won, although I fear that's going to be difficult because the enemy ships aren't going anywhere soon and I have no ships to counter them with. I have it, friends. Right here is our strategy to crush this invasion. I don't know if I'm more happy for a chance to win or just to have something to tell the people. Anyway, scouting reports have now confirmed that the next wave in this attack is over a month's march behind the first. Furthermore, trains have been prepared to move a portion of our strength back to battle the first wave. The plan is simple. Those forces remaining on the front line will delay the enemy, giving us time to clean up their vanguard and close the gaps in our defences before they can exploit them. With this, we can hold. The battle results look pretty good for Kunimitsu. As expected, we did take a lot of casualties in this Doshin regiment that fought out in front of the line, but overall, a fantastic result and a very bad one for the Matsue, who have yet again failed to invade our territory. They also still have an army behind our lines that they're not using, and Kunimitsu levels up. Their ship does actually move, but the zone of control is still over Kunimitsu, so I don't think he'll be able to move. The Hiroshima appeared to invade Kawachi with their force that's got past Setsu, very interesting. Then the Sado Navy lands forces in Echigo, but we've got men nearby to defend against that, so that's okay. But then a single ship comes to engage Compton, bringing with it massive amounts of reinforcements. The balance bar for Compton does not look good. My plan to rescue him might be about to fail. It looks like it's the Yonago bringing a massive amount of ships into the battle, and Okayama reinforcing with a couple more, meaning that Compton is in dire straits. His hull is damaged, he only has 6 operational guns, and he's going to be cornered. We will though have the coastal guns on our side, and also on my side is the fact that I know where the enemy's reinforcements are going to come from because we've seen this before. They're going to come right next to my deployment zone, so I deploy Compton to blast them at point blank range with explosive shot right as they come into the map. The centre of these 3 ships already has a damaged hull and as a result has low starting morale. A few blasts against them makes them surrender immediately, so 5 seconds into the battle, Compton has already claimed 1 enemy ship. That is a good start. We're going to have to get quite a lot more though if we're going to fight through this. So now we have to deal with these other 2 ships who are, because they're at point blank range, very dangerous. They can hit my hull with their standard shot and the hull's already damaged, meaning they might be able to pierce it. Still though, I should be able to get some nice explosives on them, especially if the second surviving enemy ship doesn't do much because it's stuck behind the one currently surrendered. The one in front takes some nice explosive fire. We start a fire on the back of their ship. They're already wavering, they don't like this situation. Even though Compton only has half of his guns, that is enough to really spook these guys and damage their ship. And you can see, as I hoped, that the other ship is just sailing away from this engagement. They are not going to try their luck one-on-one with Compton. They're going to go and join up with the rest of the fleet, leaving these guys high and dry. They're getting blasted by the explosives. Their ship is being destroyed, and very rapidly they decide to surrender after a brief bout of routing. So that's 2 ships down. Another good start, and we've now got 2 ships of cover against the enemy's reinforcements who happen to be coming in just on the other side of them. Our ironclad is in a little bit of a bad situation in terms of damage. You can see both hulls are at relatively low strength. A few shots could pierce them, but I'm going to have some time to repair because the enemy doesn't have line of sight on me right now because they're coming in such a weird way. The vast majority of their ships are blocking each other from doing anything, both moving or firing at me. So right now I'm actually in a period of relative safety because the enemy hasn't formed up properly yet. I also, on my side, as I said, have the coastal guns who are currently firing at that big block of enemy ships. The coastal guns only fire standard shot, and they're firing at pretty much the maximum range they can do, which means they're quite inaccurate. Now and again they're going to get hits, and they're going to gradually reduce the hull strength of the enemy ships, but there are so many enemy ships, the cumulative hull strength of them is probably too much for the coastal guns to take down in any sort of timely fashion. Now I'm going to use the 2 ships I've destroyed already as cover, however the enemy are using explosive shot which fires over those ships and then blows up above mine, causing damage and causing a morale shock to the troops inside. Luckily for me, the enemy formed up in such a way as to continue blocking their own line of sight for the most part. Just 1 or 2 ships are firing at me at the moment, meaning Compton isn't taking that much damage. I decided to try and sneak him behind this burning hulk of a ship, a very dangerous plan actually, because this ship could explode and do heavy damage to the ironclad, but I decided it was worth the gamble to block a few enemy hits, although the ones firing explosive shot will just go over the top as I said, so it's not going to be too useful. I'm actually mostly being fired at by these ships over here firing at the back of my ship, which is a little bit dangerous. But the majority of the enemy's ships remain stuck, as I said. Right here you can see they've got 1 ship at the front firing at me, all these guys lining up. They're trying to maneuver it seems, but unable to move. They've got themselves really wasting their firepower. Still, Compton is taking a lot of shots, and it doesn't take that much to do damage to his ship because he's already so damaged. You can see a mix of enemy and allied crew have been thrown into the water. There are definite holes in the side of my ironclad. It's not an ideal situation, the balance bar still reflects that. So the enemy slightly changed their formation over here, giving a couple more of their ships line of sight, but actually causing some of the ships behind the ones in front to fire wildly through their own allies towards me. So they're causing severe damage to the hulls of the guys in front here, just firing without really caring about the fact they don't have any way to actually hit me without firing right through the hull of their allied ship. That ship is severely damaged, as you can see, and is going to try and get out of the way now actually, but another ship comes in to replace it, so they're still going to be firing at themselves whatever they do. Not very good use of their ships. And actually I think they caused about 2 ships to surrender and 1 to rout as a result of doing this. You can see one surrendering right here, the one in front. The one just behind it immediately becomes the brunt of fire after that one surrenders. So this ship already looking pretty damaged. Its hull is at half strength. Their morale is wavering. They're on the verge of going. They don't like this at all. And that ship is going to rout and try and get out of the way. But you can see the enemy is generally forming more of a line. They've got more guns firing in my direction, which means more shots per minute are going to be hitting me, even if some of them are actually just damaging their own allies. So the situation is getting worse, despite the fact that enemy ships are beginning to fall. The balance bar remains a pretty dire sight. So Compton's taken a lot of damage. He's beginning to lose guns as well, but I have started repairing the ship. I decided that since my guns are being destroyed, there's no point firing back at the enemy. I'm just going to repair and then fire back once I'm not under threat of being sunk, because a few lucky hits from these enemies could do some serious and immediate damage. No finer men are there to serve aboard than with you. No finer war is there to fight than ours. No finer end to a struggle of 14 months be there than this. When the enemy sends a fleet large enough to make dust out of a whole damn town, you know you've got them shaken down to the bone. But there ain't much we can do now, boys. The old tub will be at the bottom soon, and we'll be going to join our lost mates in the icy grave. Now we look and pray to the proud people we fought to protect, begging the Lord God to heed our words, honor our sacrifice, and end this damned war for good. As the bombardment continues, in order to see the state of disrepair inside the ship, we're going to switch to the views of the crewmen. You can see inside the ironclad, there's a surprising amount of water sloshing around, but most of the crew are looking indifferent to it, though a lot of them are apparently drowning. I think they've fallen through the floor or something like that, and are just clipping into the ship, which apparently has see-through walls, a surprisingly advanced technology. But overall, it doesn't look good from the insider's view. We can also curiously switch to the view of the guys drowning outside the ship, which doesn't appear particularly useful. A few guys are actually looking at the enemy, as you can see. In general, Compton's crew is in pretty bad state. He's already lost the vast majority of them, as well as the majority of his guns. You can see I've actually slightly angled the ship now to present a smaller target for the enemy firing back at me, while still being able to turn my guns to fire at least some of the enemy's ships. Whether that's working, I'm not sure, because we're not really damaging the enemy enough to actually destroy them with only a couple of guns left on my ship. Luckily, the enemy have reformed again, so as to not have many of their guns able to fire at me, so that's extended the amount of time I can survive for. Quite kind of them. Eventually, as you can see, I decided to actually turn the ship to be completely facing the enemy to totally minimize the area they'll have to shoot at, although their explosive shot will still manage to do damage even if they don't really hit me. You can also see they've managed to be so inaccurate as to actually hit the buildings in the background. So I'm now just going to try and wait the timer out, essentially. There's no strategy I can use here. The ship is still beginning to sink. Repairing the ship doesn't stop the fact that it already has water inside it, and most of our crew are now gone, just a few of them still alive. Curiously, you can see defeated enemy ships under the water there, quite nice. So Compton is just hanging on. There's about 20 minutes of battle left. However, at this moment, a fire starts in the center of the ship, and this does complete destruction to the morale of the very few remaining crewmen. As a result, this ship gives up the fight. Compton has finally thrown in the towel, ending the battle in a close defeat. We took a good number of the enemy's ships with us, but we just couldn't hold out against the sheer amount of power that the enemy brought into this battle. So a defeat in many ways was inevitable. At least we did take some of the enemy's fleet down, and we've damaged a lot of the hulls of the ships that are still floating, especially with the coastal guns who will have been battering the enemy the whole time. So a good battle, but the loss was a critical one. The ironclad is gone, meaning that all of our western fleet has finally been destroyed. The enemy can now attack the ports in this area freely and continue to bombard even further inland. Moving into the next turn, we need to deal with the large number of invasions we saw during the end turn sequence. First, I'll hack through the bad news. You can see now that this area has nothing to stop the enemy from raiding my ports, and immediately they've attacked the port that Compton was garrisoning, destroying it, meaning Kawachi is now in even worse shape than it was before. They're going to continue to bombard the province, and Kawachi looks like it might be the subject of a Hiroshima invasion at any moment. Their army is walking right towards the castle. There's pretty much nothing there to defend against them. So if they want to take that province, I think they can at this point. Another invasion from the Satsuma coming into Ki has a greater chance of failure, because Ki has half a stack of troops inside it and another half stack of garrison forces, so we'll be able to have a lot of men, if not very good men, to defend against the enemy attack if it happens. In Setsu, the Okayama are still hanging around, so we need to worry about them, and in Harima, the Satsuma have more forces ready to invade, so there's still plenty of battles ready to be fought on this western front. Kunimitsu was actually able to move, it turns out, because of the enemy's fleet movements. However, Hoki was too heavily defended to risk an attack with just him. I need to keep my defensive line here intact, so he moves back into our territory to replenish troops and continues to defend against any enemies that come that way. There's also an invasion of Mimisaka about to occur. By the looks of it, you can see there's an army coming down from the west here. I'm going to move Takahisa back to defend this province. I was going to have him attack Bizen, but I'm not going to risk losing Mimisaka again. I want to try and hold the line as much as I can, so offensives are going to be put on hold for now whilst we do that. In Harima, the two Satsuma armies that were attacking the province look like they're going to go around the town at the moment, so I'll have to attack them with Takayuki if I want a chance to stop them now. But actually, it was more in my interest to move Takayuki back to come and stop the Hiroshima, who almost definitely are going to take Kawachi, and then we're going to have to stop them from moving on to take other provinces. Luckily, he can just use the train network to move back to Yamashiro province instantly, so now he can start marching towards Kawachi. He can't reach it this turn, but next turn he'll be there, so if the Hiroshima are still around, we'll have a chance to attack. We'll see what happens next time. So that's all for this episode. We'll continue to hold off the ever-escalating Imperial invasion next time on Teppou Republic.